Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome to Huda TV series on Islamic finance. This is episode number 9 with Sheikh Shadi As-Sulaiman from Sydney, Australia. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sheikh, dear viewers, we talked in the first 8 episodes about the concepts of Islamic economics, the components of the financial deals and financial transactions in Islam, the principles that Islam bases its view regarding crucial issues in the world of economy. Sheikh Shadi stressed on the importance of staying away from riba. Allah promised war on those who practice it. We talked about Islamic banking, the difference between Islamic banking that stood very well in the face of the financial crisis, unlike the Western traditional system of nowadays with all its virtual components that faltered there. We talked about Islamic financing. We talked about mortgage. In Islam, we also talked about the ethics of trading in the stock market and insurance and Islam's view on insurance. And here, in this episode, we want to talk about an issue that the world really suffers from today, which is monopoly. And monopoly can come in a lot of forms. It can come, it can be practiced by a cartel of or a group of businessmen. It can be practiced by one single tycoon. It could be practiced by the government. It can be practiced by even small merchant in a certain specific area. So, Sheikh, what are the forms in today's world of monopoly, and what does Islam think of this practice?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Now, obviously, monopoly is one of the issues that the scholars speak in fiqh, and they call it al-ihtikar. And also relate to it at-tas'ir. Ihtikar means monopoly, and tas'ir means putting set prices. Now, obviously, we know that monopolizing the stock or monopolizing the market, it's not an ethical thing, which are taking advantage of people, taking advantage of drought, taking advantage of a natural disaster, taking advantage of a situation that you want to increase your wealth over the poverty and over the demand of people. And that's rejected in Islam. That's why Islam rejected the concept of riba and made it so big and made it a major sin. And Allah declared war on those who take riba because you are taking advantage of the one who is in need. You're taking advantage of the borrower. You're taking advantage of those who are in need and desperate need. And that's why monopoly is not accepted in Islam. If there's an Islamic state, should the Islamic state set prices? The Islamic state does not set prices, but monitors the prices. Okay? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, during his time, some of the companions came and complained to him about the excessive prices in the market. So the Prophet ﷺ said, I would not set a price. I do not want to treat anyone unjustly. I don't want to face Allah Azza wa Jalla in hereafter that I misjudged or I treated anyone unjustly. And this is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, peace be upon him. And he didn't want to carry any oppression, or he was too afraid to do such, and then he'll face Allah Azza wa Jalla oppressed anyone. But then later on, the Khulafa after the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when people start to lack religion, and more corruption start to enter the market, people start to over-exaggerate with prices, and at the same time, monopolies start to take place. So what the Muslim Khalifa or what the Islamic State does is they monitor the prices. They do not set prices, but monitor the prices.
And setting the prices would be a form of communism. And that's where, the Islamic economic principles differ from the communist ones, or of course from the free capitalism.
Yeah, and the capitalism, they give the freedom to put whatever price and set whatever price they want. So Islam comes and balances. It does not set, but monitors.
Monitors.
Okay, and if there is anyone, any merchant or any person who monopolizes the market, then he is forced by the Muslim Khalifa or Muslim Imam, Muslim judge. He is forced by the state to lower the prices. This is how it works, to lower the prices.
And this is a form of consumer protection.
Of course, yeah, because you do not take advantage of people and do not take advantage of the situation of people.
Right.
And not only that, Islam condemns selfishness. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like someone who is selfish. someone who just cares about himself and takes advantage of people. On the contrary, a Muslim should be humble, and a Muslim should be generous, and a Muslim should always be generous. And that's why zakat came to force people to be generous and to take away selfishness from the hearts of people.
Subhanallah. And indeed, you know, Sheikh, during the global financial crisis, it was also that, you know, unrestricted free moves of commodities or derivatives or stocks or whatever that got everybody speculating and gambling and hurt everybody. It hurt the poor, as always the poor unfortunately are being hurt, and this time it even hurt the rich.
Not only that, Brother Muhammad, you go to some countries, the income of an individual is, for example, $1,000, and the house is $1 million to buy. Or the rent is about $5,000 or $3,000 rent. So it does not correspond. And this is where, you know, this is the outcome of capitalism. There is no justice. Someone earns, you know, for example, in a lot of the third world countries, someone earns $500 or $600 a month, and they need $2,000 to live on. So it just doesn't mix.
It doesn't make sense, and we saw also during the financial crisis that you know, the CEOs of banks who were really suffering and losing a lot of money, making billions of dollars as bonuses and stuff like that, because basically they were taking huge risks. And now this is changing. The West is realizing that this was wrong. They are trying to fix this, put a cap on bonuses, put a tax on banks, and minimize the risk. And you mentioned in previous episodes that Islam doesn't like those crazy, unlimited risk acts.
We mentioned that Islam does not come and take away the risk. In all transactions, there's a risk. There's no doubt about that. In all trades, there's a risk. But what Islam does is minimizes the percentage or the possibility of risk. And that's what Islam does. And that's why, as you mentioned, in 2 years ago in the financial crisis, the Islamic banks did not shake or did not fall the way other banks did. Yes, some of them were affected, but not in the huge effect that other banks went through.
Right, depositors at least didn't lose their money, like what happened in the West and in the East as well, in certain places. So, Sheikh, when you say that Islam doesn't like to, doesn't see that setting prices is correct, and doesn't see that leaving it unrestricted is also correct when it comes to monopoly, but it rather monitors the prices. You're saying here that fixing the price is dangerous and it's unfair, and that leaving it wide open is very risky, and it encourages monopoly.
Yes. See, also, Brother Muhammad, some scholars say for the darura, for the necessity, the Khalifa or the judge can, or the Muslim governor can set the prices. That some scholars say that for the sake of the darura. And that's obviously when people start lacking their morals. You know, like, you know, you hear in the past, you know, these are amazing things I used to hear in the past, that the righteousness of people and the piety of people, that early in the morning when a merchant used to open his shop and someone comes and buys from him, and then his next door neighbor, no one yet has entered his shop, and then a second person will come to his shop, will say, look, I've already had someone coming into my shop, go to my next door neighbor and buy something from him. Look at the morals.
SubhanAllah.
You know, and what happens when you do, you find the barakah there, the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal. You know, and this is where we lack. You know, sometimes people have a lot of money, and sometimes you have all these convenient facilities, but there's no blessings. Why? Because it's not done in a righteous way. It's not done in a respectful way. And that's why Islam continues to focuses on the morals and the ethics of those who are in the market.
In many places around the world, and many of them Muslim countries, we've seen, unfortunately, what is called marriage between authorities and businessmen. And some of those businessmen, you know, have top official political positions. And together, those businessmen and these authorities monopolize their essential key commodities in those markets, and in many Muslim countries. And what happens is, you know, the consumer gets slain. So what does Islam, how does Islam...
Again, whether it's the authority or whether it's the merchant or it's a businessman who want to monopolize such things, not acceptable. And, you know, this is where bribery comes in. And bribery, we know, rashwa, bribery is a major, major sin. and it is spread, and it's spread amongst the wealthy people. So they bribe the authority so they could get their ways or to cover their faults. And this is, of course, not. This is it's injustice. It's dhulm. وَالظُّلْمُ ظُلُمَاتِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Oppression and injustice in this world is darkness in the hereafter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like injustice. And Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in Hadith al-Qudsi, إِنِّي حَرَّمْتُ الظُّلْمَ عَلَى نَفْسِي وَجَعَلْتُهُ بَيْنَكُمْ مُحَرَّمًا فَلَا تَظَلَمُوا. I had forbidden oppression on myself, and I forbid you to oppress one another. So do not oppress one another. This is oppression.
So from that viewpoint, if a conflict of interests arises between a big businessman who is a tycoon in his industry, and at the same time he's a minister or he's a top ruling party official, then Islam wouldn't encourage such a conflict of interest.
This concept of conflict of interest, it did exist at the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And our predecessors and Sahaba gave us the best of examples.
Yeah, but those were Sahaba.
And when you look at the way they dealt and the way they told us, like, even to the stage that when a Khalifa, when someone disputes with the Khalifa will go to a judge, and he'll be standing in front of the judge, and sometimes, like in some narrations where the judge will say, Ya Khalifatul Muslimin, and then the Khalifa will say, don't call me a Khalifa, I am here like an ordinary person.
So you're saying there could be, as long as the people who are in charge have the ethics and the morals.
Of course, yeah, but the concept of conflict of interest, it's a concept that existed just in the past few centuries, but it existed within Islam and Muslims 14 centuries ago. And anything that there is a conflict of interest, a Muslim should keep away from it. So if I am, I am a minister, I am a minister of, the Minister of Industry or the Minister of,
right.
the Minister of
and
Finance.
I'm the main steel and iron.
Yeah, and then I get myself involved into the business and change the legislations according to my way. This is conflict of interest, and it's morally it's not accepted.
So it is haram.
Of course, conflict of interest, any form of conflict of interest that would only bring, a benefit to someone because he's involved in a certain area. Of course, it's haram.
All right. So, Sheikh Shadi, dear viewers, stay with us. We'll be back for the second part of our 9th episode in our series Islamic Finance here, Toda TV, in a very short while. We'll be talking about different forms of monopoly and ways to combat it. Stay with us.
Reviewing the second rule of al-mim as-sakinah. That is the letter mim. So if the first mim is non-vowel or sakinah, followed by a voweled mim, so I will merge the first in the letter and I will pronounce them as one. وَآمَنَهُمْ مِنْ. And we spoke abundantly on the virtues of seeking refuge with Allah from the outcast Satan, especially for the first reciter. He's got to recite it out loud.
والسماء ذات البروج.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
فإذا جاءت الصاخة.
وإذا النفوس زوجت.
Make sure it's Dhamma. وإذا النفوس. Thank you for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once more. Sheikh Shadi, you're talking about monopoly here. There must be modern and hidden forms of monopoly now out there as well. What can you tell us about hidden forms of monopoly? Would for instance, a professor who is supervising PhD, thesis, be a monopolizer if he refuses subjects given to him by the students if he thinks that that would make them, reach his status, because it's speaking about a certain hot topic at this moment, for instance.
You're talking about here monopolizing knowledge.
Right.
Okay, monopolizing knowledge is something that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in the hadith that anyone that's been asked a question and does not reply, anyone that knows a question does not reply, they'll be dragged into the hellfire with their mouth.
Subhanallah.
Now this hadith in Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says knowledge, and you could apply on all types of knowledge. Maybe some scholars will only apply it on Islamic knowledge, but I believe all types of knowledge, because knowledge benefits mankind. We should not monopolize any sort of knowledge.
So if you know that this area, when you invest in real estate in this specific area, you're probably, inshallah, going to make money, and people ask you, should I do this? And you know, and you are already investing.
No, you're talking about now something else, which is business.
Right.
If it's on a business level, no, you don't have to tell people. This is business.
You're not going to go and tell people, but maybe somebody will come and ask you. You're investing. You as the sheikh you are investing in this area in real estate, and you think you're going to make, inshallah, money out of it. Somebody comes and asks you about that specific place.
So someone is consulting you, for example.
Yes, consulting you.
And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-mustasharu mu'taman." If someone is being consulted, they should be trustworthy. They should be honest. And if I want to consult someone, is that a good property or not, then the person or the agent should be very honest with me. That's why samsara is another concept in Sharia, which is agency, in which you find a lot of people work in the agency. And there's many narrations that say that working in such a field is a dirty field. Why? Because it's a lot of it not all of it,
on lies.
Okay, based on lies and deception, and especially those who do not fear Allah. But those who fear Allah Azza wa Jal and are honest, then they're not doing any dirty work. So I don't want the message to be wrong that it's wrong to work as an agent. No, it's not wrong to work as an agent as long as you are honest and trustworthy. Right. But in that field, there's a lot of dishonesty. Especially in that field,
What about if you're a monopolizer in the field of sports? Would there be such a thing as monopoly in sports? I mean, you're a rich club, you're very, very rich. So whenever you find, players, successful players, coming from any other club, you just bring them all next to you. Probably some of them will drown with you because you don't need all of them. But at least you're preventing, your opponents from benefiting from them. And a rich country could do the same. Well, getting all the scientists and all the... Would this be a monopoly?
This is a contract. If the person agrees, with it, the player agrees with the club to be only for the club, then it's okay. That's a contract.
Okay.
You don't look at it as monopolizing, but that's a contract.
But you're here trying to weaken your opponents as well. Or
this is the game.
Okay. What is the role of the state, the civil society, and the individual in combating monopoly? There is a monopolizer out there. What's the role of the state?
We mentioned about the state, about the Islamic State or the government, which we're not saying this that only should be for Muslims, but this is the Islamic law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it should be implemented by everyone. If there's such monopoly taking place, and when we say monopoly, that the prices are so excessive, like if something is worth $100 and they sell it for 150, 200, it goes back to the urf, it goes back to the customs. If that's acceptable and it's a bit over exaggerated, then it's okay. But if it's way too over exaggerated, so something worth $100 is now it's getting sold $300 or $400, and according to the customs that's way too over exaggerated, then that becomes a monopoly here, and where the government interferes. The way the government interferes is the best way is to speak to those who are monopolizing to lower their prices.
What if the government is the monopolizer?
Well, this is, of course, that's wrong. The government should be there for the interest of the public. And now it's becoming a selfish interest, and unfortunately,
but this is happening.
Yeah, this is happening, and this is wrong. And in Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why did he always speak about a just imam? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look an imam who is an oppressor, which means a leader who is a oppressor. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Allahu shade, under his shade with his no shade, except his shade in the after Imam and Adil, a just leader, a just imam. So the Imam has a huge responsibility.
What's the role of the civil society?
The civil society, see, the businessmen are from the civil society, and their role is to have, the generosity and the morals of not taking advantage of people. And at the end of the day, this is a society in which we should all work together and have tolerance and solidarity. And during the times of drought, during the times of need, these are the times that you need to be generous. In Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when Allah ascended him to the heavens, he saw written on the gate of the paradise that 10 rewards, 10 hasanat for those who give a donation to the poor, and 18 hasanat, so 8 more to those who give a loan to someone who is in need of a loan. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ asked Jibreel, why is it that someone who donates gets 10 hasanat, and someone who lends his money to someone else that he's going to pay his money back to him gets 8 times more, which is 18 more? So Jibreel mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ, which is a very good point and a good principle. He said that the donator donates to the poor, and maybe the poor is not in need. Maybe the poor is not needing. But when someone wants to lend money, he only lends money when he is in desperate need. You might donate to a poor person, maybe he's not in need. You give it to him, maybe he is poor, but you don't know if he's really in need or not. But when someone comes and asks you for money and wants to borrow money from you, he is in desperate need, or else will never ask you. And that's why Allah made the rewards of those who lend money to a borrower 8 times more than those who donate money to those who are poor. So taking advantage of people is haram. And during times of disaster, that's when you should be generous. These are the times that your Islamic morals come out. These are the times that your faith plays a role. This is the time where a believer portrays himself to be a true believer.
Indeed. What's the role of the individual in combating monopoly? Can I try to punish those who monopolize if I can, stay away from that commodity? Of course, the problem is if it's such a key commodity. And we've seen how the Americans during the George W. Bush administration used to dump, used to make biofuel. They used to prevent the world from perhaps wheat or bread that they can get use of, because they wanted to make a sort of energy for themselves.
As an individual, as I mentioned, as a consumer, as a buyer, maybe there's not much for me to do. Maybe to boycott, but maybe boycotting could be a way that you could force the seller or force the supplier to lower their price. But it all goes back to the supplier himself, in which he should stop himself and fear Allah Azza wa Jal with it. And secondly, it goes back to the government, where the government need to enforce those laws and enforce that supplier to lower the prices.
Right. And so, again, if we wrap up here, Sheikh, on monopoly, Islam doesn't approve fixing prices. Islam monitors the market, but doesn't approve also the unrestricted, unmonitored market conditions. Of course, monopoly happens in a lot of fields as well. It happens in the stock market, doesn't it? You could have a group of people buying into a certain stock with if it's an unliquid one, and fixing it at a certain price in accord together, and they would be selling it at very high prices to the gang or the group of the herd that really don't know, and then these people will be drowning, and then they would have benefited from this and that secret accord. Would that be also monopoly?
Okay, just to elaborating on the point that fixed prices, as I mentioned, for the sake of the darura, the judge or the governor can enforce fixed prices, but it's not a praised thing. Right. It's not a recommended thing. Right. What's recommended to monitor the prices and let people themselves act upon their own ethics and own conscience. Let the suppliers and the merchants to lower the prices themselves.
Now, the secret accords, because this is happening in a lot of fields. You could have a secret accord in any business deal.
See, this is what we call ghish, deception. In which these secret deals from behind the scenes and in front of people. This is ghish. This is deception. The Muslim should be straightforward. The Muslim does not lie. The Muslim does not, deceive. The Muslim does not, make secret deals behind the scenes or under the table, as we say, and then he shows another thing. The Muslim is straightforward. He's honest.
Especially if you know that you are going to drown the buyers.
This is where we come, inshallah, we'll be talking about later on how the secret deals when it comes to auction and agreement between other people. And these are all the matters that the Sharia rejects because it is deception. And any sort of deception is not acceptable in Islam.
من غشنا فليس منا.
And the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man غشنا فليس منا." Whoever deceives or whoever cheats from amongst us, he's not from us. Right. Or whoever cheats to us or cheats on us, he is not from us.
And the Muslim should not cheat even the non-Muslim, right?
The Muslim does not lie. This is what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said.
Whether you're dealing in business with a Muslim or a non-Muslim.
The believer does not lie. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love those who lie. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would curse those who lie. And Allah Azza wa Jal, in the Quran al-Karim, إِنَّا لَا يُحِبُّ الْكَاذِبِينَ, Allah Azza wa Jal does not love those who lie. So as a Muslim, I should not lie. If I'm asked a question, I should be honest. If I was referred to an inquiry, I should reply with honesty. I should not be, should not lie or even be shifty. Go around the bush by deceiving people and lying to them. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. This is not the quality of the believer, and that's why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said the most beloved places to Allah are the mosques, and the most disliked places to Allah are the markets. Why? Why are the markets the most disliked places to Allah? Because there's a lot of cheating and lying that takes place. And these are not the places that Allah loves.
Sheikh Shadi Sulaiman, dear viewers, we've come to an end of this episode in our series on Huda TV on Islamic finance. Please do join us again in the upcoming episodes. Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you, dear viewers. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.